Here is the lineup, folks, for the fourth in a series of FIDE Grand Prix tournaments. This one being played in Cordisco from May 14th through the 26th. Look at this lineup. Fabiano Caruana, rated over 2,800, representing Italy. Soon to represent the United States. And I'll make a point here this fall, I guess, that he can change over to the U.S. He has dual citizenship. Out of the top 10 players in the world now, America represents 3 of them, since Wesley So from the Philippines switched his federation to the U.S. Number 2, my buddy, Carl Nakamura, almost 2,800. He went over the 2,800 mark about a month and a half ago. Great player. I expect a lot of good things from a Carl. His chance to get in the candidates final, huge deal. Third, Alexander Grishuk, I think incredibly underrated. You don't hear a lot about Alexander, but I'll tell you, he's a top player. Young Anish Giri from the Netherlands, another one to watch out for. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave from France, another great player. Sergei Karyakin, oh my God, another great player. Tomashevsky, who I believe is leading in points so far in the Grand Prix series, another great player. Boris Gelfand, older but still got the guns. World Championship challenger against Vishy Anand, lost in a tiebreak. Yakovenko, another great player. Peter Fiedler, really interesting guy, another great player. We'll see which Peter shows up. If the good Peter shows up, he can be really tough. A guy I like personally, Leonardo Dominguez from Cuba, another great player. When he's playing on, he's on. And a really exciting player, Jobava from Georgia. You never know what the hell Jobava is going to do. The games are always fun to watch. And there's the lineup, folks, of the final Grand Prix tournament to determine the candidates to be in the final tournament to play for the World Championship. Don't miss any of the action. This is going to be great. And here it is, folks, the fourth Grand Prix Series tournament for the candidates final to play Magnus Carlsen for the World Championship. My buddy from the U.S., Carl Nakamura, is in it. Don't miss any of the action. This is going to be a great tournament. Hi, folks. Chan Cordisco back again. Another game from round 1 of the fourth in a series of tournaments. FIDE Grand Prix leading up to the candidates final. And that tournament will determine the challenger to Magnus Carlsen. Heck of a game. White, Jobava from Georgia. You never know what the hell he's going to do. He's an exciting player. He's definitely off the wall. And Tomashevsky from Russia as black. Top world-class player. He's come a long way in the last couple of years. Let's get to it. Jobava is white. Tomashevsky is black. It's going to be a semi-Slav. A6. Typical stuff. E3. B3. C5. Bishop. Pawn takes. Pawn takes. And according to the computer, that's the last book move. Bishop E7. I don't know much about the Slav or even semi-Slav, so I don't know much to contribute as far as the opening goes. Bishop D3, Knight C6, white castles. Interesting line the computer like was C5, which I probably would have done that myself. It does make the pawn on D4 a little backward, but B6 is the line. A4, pawn takes, knight takes. Queen checks, queen takes, king takes, knight d7. That's the line that the computer liked. Interesting. After white castles, black castles, leaving that tension still in the center. Now, oddly enough, if D had taken c4, the computer likes bishop takes c4 instead of pawn takes c4, which I found interesting. Obviously, it's the guard D4 pawn, but you're going to isolate it. Well, as I think Victor Korchnoi said once, if you can't play with an isolated D-pawn, just give up chess. Rook to C1, Bishop D7, Rook to E1, just maneuvering the pieces. Finally, and the computer agrees, C5 by white. Okay, that pretty much locks stuff up. Queen gets off the back rank A3, probably to keep the knight out. That would have been a little annoying there. Bishop F8, interesting. Computer likes knight to A5. Queen F4, knight H5. One of those three choices. But went bishop to F8 instead. Obviously he wants to push the E-pawn. B4, rook A to D8. Here he comes. H3. Now the computer agrees with this move, and I find it interesting. I never would have found this move or even considered it. G6, he's rerouting the bishop. After white closed down the dark squares for the bishop, he's rerouting them to here or here. Interesting. And I think with that bishop here, maybe start going after the D-pawn. Pretty good plan. Rook to B1 for Jobava. Bishop G7 for Tomashevsky. He's rerouted that bishop now. Theoretically, that's his good bishop, being all his center pawns around light squares. B5. He moves the knight instead of taking the pawn first. A4. Bishop comes back to C8. I think he wants to start pushing that E-pawn. I think that's been his plan all along, but he needs something to guard the D-pawn. Bishop C1. White wants to push on through. What to do, what to do. This is usually the part of the game where I just can't seem to formulate a plan. So what would you do here if you're white or black? Of course, B6 is the obviously choice for white. You know, that knight is not on A5 isn't really doing anything. But it does, once you go B6 though, that knight escapes C6. As black, maybe push to E5, open things up a little bit later. Don't know. Once black moves this knight, this bishop will be guarding this square, the queen, so you can push the E-pawn up. I don't know, let's see. H6. Jobava decides to go queen to C2. And we can see, of course, he's got that queen-bishop battery bearing down here. And also the bishop. And the knight could even jump in at a later date. So he does have something going. And right now, believe it or not, it's an over 2-point advantage for white. Now, I haven't seen a Tomashevsky game where he's been behind this much this early. And nothing against Jobava, but he's so unconventional that he usually doesn't get very good at positions against really good players. So what to do is black here. He got himself in a jam already. That bishop on C8 is worthless. The knight on A5 is worthless. Knight to C4. He does something with him. Bishop takes. Pawn takes. Queen to A2 is a good choice, and the computer likes that. I kind of like it too, because there's not much he can do to defend that pawn. Decides to go rook to B4 instead, and the bulk of white's advantage now is gone. It's not a blunder by any means or a question mark move, but so Tomashevsky goes along with his plan, E5, what he wanted to do quite a while ago. Now that rook's in a weird spot on B4. What's it really doing there besides attacking the C4 pawn? B6. Give you an idea if he had taken the pawn. After pawn takes, rook takes check, knight takes, rook. And it just, now it's a pretty good advantage for black. So that pawn couldn't have been taken. He didn't take it. Queen to B8. Rook takes. Rook takes. D takes. All of a sudden, that 2¼ point advantage now is down to 2/3 of a pawn. Knight moves. Excuse me, bishop to F5. Hitting the queen first. The intermezzo move. Queen to E2. Hits the queen again. Queen to E3. Now he finally moves the knight, and any advantage white had is now gone. It's basically an even game. It looks pretty scary for black, but he's got that c4 pawn now defended very nicely. How's he going to attack the pawn on c4 without a light squared bishop? The bishop pair could prove deadly. Knight to d5. Knight takes the pawn. Knight checks. Now the advantage is just way going over towards black. It's over a point advantage now for black. That's a 3-point swing in less than 8 moves. King to h7. c6. Here comes the pawn. Knight takes. Check. Queen takes is basically the only move. Number 2 is g takes, and that's what he takes, and that was the beginning of the end. If queen had taken, queen to d6, c7, and rook to e8, and black's okay. After g takes, queen to d6, bishop a3. Now it starts getting hairy, but it's too late. It's an almost 6-point advantage now for black. The only chance at counterplay on the computer was bishop d2, and after rook e8, c takes. He might be able to hang on, but frankly I doubt it. But after bishop a3, pawn takes, pawn to b7, rook has to go to b8. I don't know. Knight to c8. Now that rook is just trapped. Now it's just a matter of turning the screws. Queen to e7. Queen takes the pawn. Queen takes f7, but white's doomed. Queen checks. King h2. Queen takes check. King to h1. And now bishop to e2. And that's the end. That's where Jobava throws in the towel. Give you an idea. After bishop, threatening mate, bishop checks, queen has to take, queen takes, king to h2, and that's it. It's over. So tough break. I think Jobava was playing pretty well, and he just lost the thread of it. And Tomashevsky finished him off. So that was the only decisive game in round 1 of the 4th in a tournament, the Grand Prix tournament, being played in Russia. I hope you enjoyed it. And I want you all to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.